That day I was kind of thinking, when are the bodies gonna stop coming up?
They were unarmed, they were defenseless, they were killed in cold blood.
This is a litmus test for Philippine justice. Impunity just cannot go on.
We're not safe to do our jobs in the Philippines.
The goal whenever we carry out a CPJ investigation is to prod the government towards justice. We wanted to make sure that we were on the ground, that we were supporting journalists, and making sure that the government knew that we were going to be there for the long haul.
Our greatest concern was this impunity, which has become so pervasive in the Philippines. Unless we make this a top priority, then we're just not doing our job.
With the Philippines, you have the greatest number of unresolved media killings per capita in any peacetime functioning democracy in the world.
CPJ's never faced anything quite like the Maguindanao massacre.
On November 23rd, 2009, a convoy of 57 people, including 32 journalists and media practitioners, set out to a provincial capital.
The governor had received threats that if he filed his candidacy, he would be killed. So the governor decided that he would not go and file the certificate himself. He would send his wife, his sister, and other female relatives. So they were traveling in a convoy on a lonely provincial highway when they were stopped by armed men.
They had pre-dug huge pits where they intended to bury the evidence. The plan went awry when the actual backhoe they were using to dig the holes to dispose of the bodies ran out of gas. So that's how the crime scene was found, with approximately half the bodies buried in these pits and a number of bodies still out in the open where they were shot and killed.
Around noon, messages came, bodies were being found. I'll admit I was shocked. I could have been there.
Hindi naman ako makapunta doon sa site kasi bagong panganak pa lang ako noon. 13 days pa lang yung anak namin. 10 araw lang niya nakasama. Kaya nung nakita ko lang, doon ako naniwala nung makita ko yung bangkay. Pero hindi pa rin ako naniwala masyado kasi hindi ko na sila nakikilala eh. Nabalot na yung katawan nila.
It's unimaginable for me as a journalist who's lived and reported in the Philippines. I had never seen anything like this before.
The whole trip from General Santos to Maguindanao was kind of eerie.
We drove up the dirt road and Mother Nature had taken back the crime scene. The pits were overgrown with weeds. You wouldn't have known a massacre had taken place there.
The whole time we were with Achilles, and he kept pointing out places where the convoy had stopped. So it felt kind of like we were on that trip with him again.
What extra precautions do you have to take now after the massacre?
Well, when I'm in Jinsan, I'm extra careful, especially in coming out in the evening. If 32 journalists were able to sacrifice their lives for the sake of freedom, why should I be afraid of my own life?
We're curious in the case of the Maguindanao massacre, if you found that the crime scene was deliberately contaminated or contaminated otherwise.
The investigation is quite superficial. I have to give you a sense of what it was like. And this is the official sketch of the scene. I don't find it completely accurate. If this were in another country, it wouldn't get to court at all.
Have you had access to the vehicles that were taken in by the police?
All I managed to do was to take pictures from afar. I have no idea what is inside the vehicles. That's something missing. If I had my way, Knowing how these individuals were shot, I would like to see the van, because I'm pretty sure they were shot inside and the bullets are still there. And that bullet is evidence.
What's interesting is that CPJ was able to see this evidence before the private prosecutor who we're working with. They have these cars that are marked with really clear media logos, TV, press, that have been completely pounded and destroyed.
When you saw the armored cars, when you saw the backhoe with the mp4 logo on the side, you realized how incredibly well equipped these people were. Where did they get this power? If they allow that to evolve, how are they ever going to get on top of bringing a successful prosecution?
We've tried to help the families on two fronts: direct medical financial assistance and helping pay for the fees of the prosecutor that's taking their case to court. But they tell us about how a man who allegedly is in touch with the Ampatrian clan came to see them and offered them a huge amount of money to sign a blank piece of paper and withdraw their accusation against the Ampatrian clan. One can only fear that there's going to come a moment when one of these very, very poor families who really need a lot is going to give in to the bribes.
Someone has to take a stand there. If the government's not capable of doing it, then it becomes our responsibility.
I probably don't need to bring this to your attention, but there was the vice mayor who testified in those proceedings, and the next day his house was attacked by mortars. Only 4 of those 20 have been given any sort of security, witness protection that can be considered adequate considering who they're up against.
We want to see the Philippines going down in the Global Impunity Index, and that the Philippines can be an example to the rest of the world like Colombia and Brazil have been.
We're confident that through time, this case will be resolved.
That's where we come in, right? We're the watchdog. CPJ will ensure that the government follows through on the commitments they've made here.
CPJ's mission to the Philippines is part of a global strategy to combat impunity wherever it occurs.
When 32 journalists can be killed with impunity, are you a functioning democracy or are you a failed state? It's, quite frankly, a black and white case.
Hindi, yung mga media hindi lang minamaliit. Kasi kaya lang, yun nga ginagawa nila, i-cover lang para sa tingin ng tao walang kwenta. Pero sasabihin ko sa kanya na yun ang ikinamatay ng kanyang ama, kaya yun po.
Considering the magnitude of their crime, I believe justice will eventually be served to the victims. Because if not, then this country has no future.
85% of the journalists who are killed in the world are journalists just like those who were killed in Maguindanao. Local journalists covering a local story. That's the harsh, harsh reality of journalists working everywhere. Not just in the Philippines, not just in Maguindanao, but around the world. All of us know that the responsibility for bringing these people to justice lies with us. You just can't stop.